My name is Ella Desmond.
I'm Sarah Rose Stack.
I'm Amalia Cherba.
I'm Krasner.
So if you were part of the PR team for the university, how would you have handled the protest differently? And from the standpoint of crisis management, do you think the response was appropriate? Well, we discussed that obviously it was very handled differently, but...
Yeah, and so again, I'm going to speak from the perspective of how public relations and communication went because, again, I'm not a professional in the area to decide when is the right time to call the police or not. I genuinely don't know how I would have acted in that situation. But I do believe that the communication was not up to par. And I say that knowing, of course, that this was somewhat of an unprecedented situation where they felt like they needed to act quickly for whatever reason. But I think a lot of relationships were damaged. A lot of trust was broken between students and the administration, faculty, staff and the administration, alumni, donors. A lot of that was compromised. And I think that in addition to being compromised because of the decision itself that was made, that was, in my opinion, a little bit premature to call that many police. In addition to that, the communication was not there. So even if you look today, they have a landing page and they have 2 communications for May, 1 for June, 1 for July, 1 for August with official updates. And the thing about that is the communications themselves are, I believe, well written and they are comprehensive. But I think that during the situation when there were so many questions just coming from so many different types of stakeholders, it warranted more than 2 press releases or 2 news releases. And then in addition to that, I will just add to this, and I think social media might be probably something you want to talk about later, but I do also think that they did not communicate on social media properly at all. In public relations, in communication, whenever there is a crisis, and it doesn't have to be just a crisis that impacts your organization, your institution, if it's a natural disaster, if it's a big international crisis that happens, you pause all normal communication as usual. You don't just continue posting your random content plan, or not random, but your planned content plan. Yeah. You pause that and you address situations head on, because that in so many ways is your direct line of communication with your public, especially when you think about the student body, right, who was tremendously affected. They're all on Instagram. And so I can't imagine what it must have felt like to be a student and to wake up and then see a picture of a cupcake wishing the university a happy birthday, in May. May of 2024. I just can't imagine what that would have made me feel like as a student. I think other universities who were also presented with similar challenges and had to communicate quickly without a lot of time to edit and get third sets of eyes and stuff, I think that other universities, in my opinion, just handled it better. And so if you look at NYU Instagram now, you can scroll back and you'll still see their daily updates to their student body and to the public. If you scroll back on UMass, it's all deleted. They also were deleting comments, which again is against best practices. Mm-hmm. So when you're posting your regular content when it should have otherwise have been paused, and people are commenting questions, what's going on with this? Why aren't you considering this demand? Where are the students? Where are the faculty? How are the students that are trying to graduate handling? There's all these very legitimate questions, and I felt like none of them were responded to. And so I'm going on a little bit too much, but if you think about the most powerful forms of communication are two-way symmetrical, right? And so we know that. We know that as, trained communications professionals, and yet the tactic that was employed was to go one way. And I think that, again, just added to the damage and the broken trust.
Yes, we were thinking about, obviously, the two-way communication, how important that is, specifically in PR, but how the school communicated with the student body, at least, was mainly through email, which, again, is kind of like a one-way communication because people aren't responding to those. They're just receiving that information. And in those emails, we're trying to kind of figure out if the information that was expected or the students needed to hear, was that communicated properly or even at all. So Yeah, it's
And
definitely...
that's a legitimate question. So I think in any situation, especially one like this, where like timely information needs to be going out, there should be ongoing communication, even if the update is the status is the same. And that's what I think other universities did really well, is like, and it actually helped to de-escalate people's fears, because they would log in and see no change today, and it made them feel safer, right? Made them feel better. And just not saying anything and ignoring comments and not giving students or faculty or people an opportunity to communicate and get questions answered, I think was a huge mistake. I think it's okay to do those emails, those one-way communications. Like, you have to get the message out there, but there should be a way or a place for people to ask questions.
Yeah. So I think, obviously, I think you were kind of getting at that people's perception of the university did change with their reaction to the protests. I think in your experience, if you've seen people fail to communicate properly, how has that gone on to affect them?
Yeah, so I think it depends. I mean, there is a power play there's power at play when you think about institutions like this one, right? So if your perception of the university is damaged or trust is broken, but you're a junior or senior, okay, most people may not be in a position to say, well, I'm just going to go somewhere else, and they'll just suck it up and get through it and do what they need to do, right? And then there are people that may have made different decisions. And I don't know what the statistics are, but I've read a lot of articles, and I've listened to a lot of broadcasts this summer about how the incoming freshman class, a lot of people were choosing to take a gap year. And I think that is largely due to universities nationwide, what they were experiencing, and how people watched the reaction from these universities unfold. So I think with regard to UMass Amherst, I don't think that they are immune to that. I think that they kind of get lumped in, and that students in general were kind of reconsidering, do I want to start my college experience this fall, or do I want to like wait until things settle down and feel more fleshed out? In terms of perception of this university, I think, just based on the continuous demands for some of the students that are still facing charges or having to, go through, I think there's like an internal process that they have to go through for like the behavior, whatever merit or whatever that they have to go through. I think that, there are people that have changed their perception of UMass. I think people used to think, they want us to do these things and stand up for what we believe is right. And then again, actions and words, right? Are those things in alignment here?
Yes.
With other my other experience, I've seen brands completely fall apart and not be able to recover. But again, just kind of circling back to that power play, there was nothing big at stake for the consumer in those situations. So I don't think that they would be like really good to compare, because like you stop drinking a certain product or putting a certain powder on your face, your life doesn't change and you're not really impacted. You just make a different decision. I'm not going to buy from this place anymore because of how they treat their employees, because of their interest in XYZ. But in the case of an institution that like literally holds the paper to your future, I think it's something to be thought about.
Yeah. When we conducted street interviews toward the beginning of the semester, and from those interviews we kind of got the sense that people were almost like sad about it, because they would talk about how much they love the university, the people, the campus, their professors, their classes, and everything, just that they lost a little bit of trust in like the higher up of the situation, which is unfortunate to hear.
And just to your point, Izzy, I do think that is so important to recognize, because I think that the trust that was broken was mainly with the administration. I think one thing that I've noticed is that students feel more than ever that their faculty, the staff at this university, their peers are behind them, when they choose to stand up for something.
If it was your choice, what would you recommend the university do to kind of move on from this?
Or even in the future to like help prevent this issue, because people, like, there's going to be like anniversaries of protests coming up. We don't know how people are going to respond to that, and like what the university is going to do different. Or like you said before, maybe not using their social media presence in the proper way? Do you think they could like learn from that?
Yeah, I think these are awesome questions. So one, I think some of the things they actually kind of are doing, one of the things I do like is that on that landing page, they do have on there, like, what is the right to protest? What is the right to free speech? How can you do this legally and so that you don't have to worry about sanctions or being told to be quiet or to leave or anything like that. So I think providing students with their legal rights and showing them how they can express those rights is a really good step. And I also think it helps, it's a step in the right direction in terms of repairing a loss of trust there. But I also think that, moving forward, if I were on the public relations team, I would have a very, very strong plan in place for crisis communication. And there are so many academic theories. There are so many proven ways to respond to a crisis. It's a lot like being a doctor. You have to almost like diagnose the issue. Who is impacted? Who is at fault? How can you create a really strong two-way communication plan? And what are the best practices, right? Continuing on with scheduling content as usual on social media should not be the case if something huge happens ever. Like that is basic public relations 101, and so I think following best practices, using things like situational crisis communication theory to build a strong, quick response that is, based on fact, more statistically going to position you to have a positive result, I think would make the most sense.
Well, awesome. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate getting your perspective on a PR lens through this issue.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No problem.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.